I told you I'd be back. Congratulations on the newest arrival in the family. What, you're not married? What the fuck are you doing with your life? My legal name is Pecking for Good TV, and here is my 2017 installment of my Halloween marathon, where over the next 31 days I will be voicing my God-given opinion on some crap that's been gathering dust in the corner of my room. Special shout out goes to my ass, no prolapse. Nelson Mandela did die in 1990, as I pick up the popcorn horror franchise I left last year with my hopes and dreams with the prequel no one asked for, 2009's Underworld Rise of the Lycans. The film is an expansion upon several flashback scenes from the previous two Underworld games, movies, as we get to find out sod all we did not learn from those entries as a vampire and werewolf get it on amongst the movie we all wish Passion of the Christ really was. Rise of the Lycans is a step up from Underworld Evolution in almost every aspect. The production values are higher, the cast is more committed, and the medieval setting fits the thespian shenanigans better than any dimly lit Eurotrash hellhole ever could. The time period works so well for Underworld 3, which is actually 1, you start to get the feeling that this is where writer-director Len Wiseman wanted the series to be from the very beginning. However, set design cost money, son, so off to Yugoslavia we went. Thankfully though, enough people saw the first two Blade clones, which are actually Matrix clones, which are actually Ghost in the Shell clones, which are actually Blade Runner clones, which are actually the creation of the humanoids clones, which are actually enough in order to convince a studio to give Lycans fiscal breathing space in order to create an identity for itself, which it does so. However, still, in Lycans, they try too much. The boilerplate dialogue is laughable at times and hinders immersion. The film is too dramatic in general, really, to be taken as nothing more than a good example of a winter blockbuster, when above average production values and cast commitment commanded more. It's a difficult question to ask whether the Underworld series would be better off with adding self-awareness and humour to proceedings. Sure, in theory, it would make characters and situations more relatable, but the franchise is so steeped in the fantastique that I feel a lighter tone would actually be a hindrance. In the end, Lycans is an Underworld entry that highlights the series' strengths as much as its faults. The series is fine as it is, being fantasy horror spectacle, and this is what Lycans excels at, with decent action scenes and plenty of raw emotion. On a side note, the action scenes are additionally interesting as they exemplify the traditional period in late 2000s Hollywood action between practical effects and CG animation, as both appear in this film side by side. The film's running length of 90 minutes is also a breath of fresh air in comparison to contemporary releases. It feels brisk and fast-paced. Now, how depressed one should feel about that statement, I'll leave that up to you, the audience. All 12 of you. Underworld, Rise of the Lycans, is good popcorn blockbuster action. It doesn't outstay its welcome, even though it does not extend any itself, as it almost demands that you're already a fan of the Underworld series going in. Therefore, I recommend Lycans to those found wanting after The Mummy for decent blockbuster horror action, and of course also to fans of the Underworld series, as this is the best entry I've seen thus far. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the next installment in the franchise, 2012's Underworld Awakening. Back to Yugoslavia we go with Underworld Awakening from 2012, directed by Mr. Marlino and Stein. Salon appears once more again, trying to find her lost werewolf boyfriend whilst being pursued by a detective and a mad scientist on a revenge mission. With humans and werewolves after their tails, Salon and her furry piece fight for every inch of survival as they seek shelter. As I have not made it a secret on past reviews of this series, the modern entries into Underworld are not really to my liking. I mean, I appreciate them, sure, but the combination of horror movie cliches and action movie cliches is probably just too much of a toxic beverage to handle, really. Underworld Awakening is no different, as it feels over-edited at times and over-dramatic, of course, the series' most cardinal sin. Underworld Awakening attempts to make new friends, as it feels at times like a pale gothic imitation of The Fugitive, being saved by the fact that it's an incredibly gory blockbuster, especially for 2012, and that the pacing of the narrative is breakneck. Seriously, this is the fastest feeling Underworld movie to date that I've seen thus far, that is. A simple but effective build-up leads to a really, really good third act. I mean, like, seriously, it is like the best climax of all of the Underworld films I've seen thus far. It was tense, it reminded me a little bit of Die Hard, it was just cool, man. Underworld Awakening feels a lot like Underworld Evolution, only that it has a shorter running length, and also it has a tighter narrative, a bit more predictable. I recommend Underworld Awakening to those who wanted more of Underworld Evolution and the other modern entries into the Underworld series. Everyone else, well, if the series hasn't won you over by now, then it won't with this entry. So, for fans only. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the latest in the series, 2016's Underworld Blood Wars. Hello and welcome to day 3 of my month-long Halloween marathon. Today I catch up fully with the Underworld franchise by covering the most recent entry from last year. This is me reviewing Underworld Blood Wars from 2016. Directed by Anna Forster. Machiavellian antics and the like preside over a story involving both vampires and werewolves fighting to obtain lead protagonist Salon's blood, which contains indistinct magical powers. Unless it makes a cool visual, that is. Underworld Blood Wars is just another entry into the much maligned action horror blockbuster franchise, and a mediocre one at that. Aside from hints at Salon's mortality, there is nothing to define Blood Wars from the previous contemporary period Underworld entries. Unlike yesterday's Awakening, Blood Wars spends too much time world building and not enough time storytelling. It almost feels nostalgic watching Blood Wars, as so many of its faults are shared with the first Underworld entry. Too much time is spent on building a universe around such a paper-thin concept as vampires versus werewolves. I mean, bloody hell, how many comedies over the years are picked up and run with the same exact concept? Why do you do this, Underworld? No one ever takes you seriously. Blood Wars also lacks scope. I don't know whether it's because of the overall tight composition of the cinematography or just a simple lack of locations. The budget is truly felt in this one nonetheless. As viewers, we are also left wanting strong bloody violence, usually a trademark of the Underworld franchise, as Blood Wars is relatively toothless given previous entries. In fact, Blood Wars is the first Underworld entry to be given a 15 rating by the BBFC since the first one back in 2003. A sign of contemporary Hollywood's frigidness? Or is that kind of thing just now passé? Either way, such an omission fucks me off, as gore was one of the franchise's most consistent sources of entertainment for me. What's left for me in Blood Wars instead is the most consistent source of aggravation for me concerning this franchise: the dialogue. Reliably tin-eared and resoundingly god-awful, the shit that spews out these characters' mouths out-and-out corpses more scenes than its strawmans. There is simply no place for such one-dimensional character interactions from a theatrically released genre film in the year of our Lord 2016. Sure, we still get the occasional Nicholas Sparks adaptation, but there is simply too much competition nowadays to let such tedious thespin fly. Underworld has no choice but to shape up and sharpen its scripts, or it will most certainly be left in the past as a millennial cinema curiosity. It doesn't make me happy lambasting such ambitious blockbuster filmmaking taking place at a time when such a thing is severely lacking. But Blood Wars just does not equate to the tight narrative and impressive action set pieces of its previous entry Awakening. The film is more of the tedious same from Underworld, as it focuses too much on too many one-dimensional characters, and the plot is consequentially muddled. You know what? I've taken too much. Blood Wars is just a meandering action horror film whose aesthetics and cinematic values are out of their time enough to show rust, but not enough to hone in that sweet nostalgia dollar. It's in a hellish limbo which reminds us of the meaningless capitalist cinema we consume, instead of the, I'm sure, meaningful memories we got consuming such media. I dread the day I look back on Blood Wars fondly. But it's coming. Just not now. Underworld Blood Wars is strictly for fans only, and not even that I'm sure of. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film I hopefully get a breath of fresh air with, as I cover 2014's Resurrection of the Mummy. The deadliest thing to happen to Egypt since Facebook, Resurrection of the Mummy, directed by a name I can actually pronounce, Patrick McManus. Father and daughter archaeologists reunite as they go on to search for a pyramid believed to be full of ancient treasures. Little do they know that their actions are about to awaken an ancient evil, unleashing a deadly curse from its eternal tomb. Or is it already? And you understand, you know what I mean. No appreciation then for efficient economic script writing from contemporary audiences, going by this film's IMDb rating of 1.9. The multiple use of green screen distracts from a straightforward B-movie narrative which helps the events chug along quite nicely, in my opinion at least. Resurrection of the Mummy is an effectively atmospheric, if cheap as balls, monster movie revolving around that most elusive of movie monsters, the Mummy. Yes, it does look like £500 was spent on this film, or 480 for you Trump supporters. But seriously, I mean, that doesn't matter to me. I mean, what I've seen is just a really good B-movie. It don't matter if half of the shit was shot on a green screen. The script was good, the characters were good for a 90-minute film, and I believe that this is an efficient film. It knows what it wants to be, and it achieves that quite adequately. However, some elements are suspect, such as the flat as fuck acting and the total lack of a film score. Editorial. Actually, there is a film score to this. You see, I watched the film in the 5.1 surround sound audio option, and apparently they forgot to add the fucking film score. I mean, I seriously, I didn't hear anything. All my speakers are up and running. The central one, the left, the right. There is no fucking film score for the 5.1 sound mix. I mean, what the fuck? All we get is like a fart FFX, a fart sound effect at the credits as it's rolling, just out of fucking nowhere. I mean, like, people paid money for this shit. I mean, good goddamn. So yeah, there is a film score, and from what I heard from it for 2 minutes was like, it's just your usual generic stuff. Probably would have just not helped anyway, in fact. Yeah, the generic film score still doesn't mean, it adds nothing to the film. Anyway, again, what the fuck? The cast mostly consists of backpacking /victim airheads, with the only true find being a one Stuart Rigby, who pulls off a sleazy archaeologist, quite well. I mean, he is the true highlight of this film. His chirpy British accent and 10 o'clock shadow evoke a creepy atmosphere around him, and he truly carries the film. Really good. In conclusion, Resurrection of the Mummy is hardly a prime example of the Mummy movie, but we don't get many of these, so its uniqueness is enough to look past the other glaring faults of the film in order to make it sort of enjoyable. I can't really recommend this to any self-respecting horror fan, but if you're in for lo-fi thrills, you can do worse than this. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is a blast from the past as we cover the Cameron Mitchell starring The Demon. Inoculated Cameron Mitchell plays an inoculated psychic in The Demon from 1979 or 1981, I don't fucking know. Directed by Percival Rubens. A maniac killer with razor gloves slices and dices through every town USA, whilst Cameron Mitchell stumbles over himself trying to catch the psycho with voices in his head he claims to be having due to telekinesis. Yeah, I know that one, telekinesis. That's right next to Jack Daniels, isn't it? Levity aside, Mitchell is the one and only psychotronic delight in this seriously dull proto-slasher that's atypical of Cameron Mitchell's lo-fi filmography. Its flat cinematography and TV movie direction are not helped by a tedious screenplay littered with anti-suspense and unremarkable characters. Cameron Mitchell's reliably intoxicated presence just spares his film from becoming the champion killer of the 1970s. Sure, we get fleeting moments of mad imagery such as a long-haired skeleton lodged up a tree, but the build-up is so poor this kind of insanity just blends in with the boredom. This is truly the face of 1970s horror rose-tinted fanboys care to forget. Atrociously paced and dimly lit with no engaging characters, which goes a long way in killing any potential suspense scenes might have had. In conclusion, time has not been kind to The Demon, and it's better left obscure, as it's a painfully boring 70s horror film with manic moments of Mitchell that are just not frequent enough to save it. Whatever you're paying for it, it's not worth it, as the same VHS rip on this DVD has now made its way onto the very video streaming service you're using right now. Even when it's free though, it's still not worth your time. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is a late 80s offering from everyone's favourite Greek horror director as we cover Nikos Mistrakis' Edge of Terror. Nikos Mistrakis performed some decent carpentry as we cover Edge of Terror from 1986, otherwise known as The Wind. Mystery writer Sian Anderson leaves her boyfriend John for 3 weeks of intense writing in the isolated Greek town of Monemavasi. Her imagination gets the better of her though, as the story she makes up of the landlord of the residence she's staying at getting killed by his handyman soon becomes a hideous reality. Nikos Mistrakis is an often underrated genre director. He has an incredible amount of range. Most people only know him though by his video nasty entry, Island of Death, but that would be coating over like 20 years of solid genre filmmaking, from everything from action films to thrillers to straight up horror. The man's philosophy is that filmmaking should be fun, and I for one agree. Edge of Terror, or The Wind, is not Mistrakis' best work, but it's still a good example of an 80s low-budget thriller. It has a decent cast, great scenic locations, and even has music by Hans Zimmer. So that's a thing. Whilst not being overly graphic or even frightening, it's still a fun rollercoaster ride. I cannot find much to hate on with this movie, so I am going to easily give it a recommendation, as Edge of Terror is everything the Demon from yesterday should have been. It has engaging characters, a decent pace, and, that's all you need. It's not much to ask for. Edge of Terror is super cheap, and it's well worth it, as it's a thriller with its heart and mind in the right place. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the drug-infused horror Someone's Knocking at the Door. Not quite Neo Grindhouse, not quite slasher film, not quite pretentious art house piece of shit. We cover Someone's Knocking at the Door from 2009, directed by fucking hell, Trump supporter Chad Ferrin. Two drugged up serial killers kill people with their sexual organs, whilst a couple of douchebags get high on PCP. That's about it, really. Edgy, 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 edgy. Fuck off. Someone's Knocking at the Door exemplifies faggot-ass Gen X filmmaking at its most fucking obnoxious. Can you tell I not like this film? The drug trip eternal logic of the film is grating, and it goes a long way in killing any mood it creates. With the, rape and that. Having a cast full of cancer doesn't help either. These cunts are a mixture of the natural douchebaggery of the victims of the golden age of slashers to the now post-Scream misanthropic pieces of shit that you don't want to see give you a $200,000 check, let alone have conversations for fucking 5 minutes straight about fuck all. I don't give a fuck about these people. They can fucking die in a fire. This is not entertainment. Impressive cinematography and flashy editing aside, the overall passive-aggressive tone of Someone's Knocking at the Door just too much to... It's just fucking awful. This particular brand of cancer that Someone's Knocking at the Door exemplifies is the exact same that goes through most of Brian De Palma's filmography. Obnoxious pieces of shit going around being obnoxious pieces of shit, and the whole thing just happens to be nicely photographed. This kind of filmmaking says more about the filmmakers themselves than anything else. Just fucking sad. I'm just not this film's audience. I can appreciate that it's a well put together film, but that's a fucking weak excuse in any kind of way. I just don't like the film, but I know other people will. It still doesn't excuse it from having obnoxious characters and fucking nonsensical editing and just this plain atmosphere of contempt. It's just a very aggressive film, and therefore it makes me very aggressive in a way that is not fun. It's a political film. It's about attitudes towards drugs, and since when has politics ever been a mellow experience? In conclusion, someone's knocking at the door is incoherent and obnoxious. It does not surprise me that this film was partly based on a short, because 10 minutes is really all you can take from this piece of shit film. Such an angry film, for so little it says. Like if you want, also consider commenting and subscribing. Tomorrow's film is a doozy, as I cover 2016's Joker's Poltergeist, the Aurora Massacre.
You shouldn't like guns! You shouldn't like guns! You shouldn't like guns!
From the writer of the abortion-themed torture porn The Life Zone comes a postal-themed slasher film for the ages, 2015's Joker's Poltergeist, the Aurora Massacre, starring Eric Roberts and Lacey Marie Meyer, and directed by Christopher S. Lind. James Jennings commits a mass shooting in a movie theatre during the screening of this film's American title. Protagonist Aurora, you see what they did there? Aurora witnesses her father get killed and is only spared by the actions of a good guy with a gun. Aurora gets engaged with said good guy with a gun and decides to reopen the movie theatre in tribute to the shooting victims. Little does she know the extent some extremists will go to get their message across, and her and the other remaining survivors are soon subject to spooky goings-on on the anniversary of this based on real events massacre. I have confidence that I have as much respect for the real-life victims of the 2012 Aurora mass shooting as writer, producer, actor wasn't hugged enough as a child. Kenneth Val can't be fucked to pronounce his last name demonstrates with his work on Joker's Poltergeist when I say that this is a loaded gun of a film.
Hey, my arms aren't tied up.
Of course not.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank this night. Because you shouldn't like guns! You shouldn't like guns! You shouldn't like guns! You shouldn't like guns!
Kenneth sure as fuck wasn't born with a double-barreled name gives us one spicy meatball as he sugar's over classy right-wing trolling with gore and tits to give mentally ill horror fans pro-Second Amendment propaganda disguised as something Neil Breen would cook up if he up and decided to have surgically removed his morals. To Kenneth Dow Vaccine Knows credit, Joker's Poltergeist, the Aurora Massacre is a genuine psychotronic experience, and in contemporary independent cinema, where every 2-bit camera guy hack thinks he's one director's credit away from working on the next Marvel movie, it's good to see a modern example of a true white male outsider visionary splooging his angst all over the screen. Joker's Poltergeist, the Aurora Massacre, does to the terrorist attack movie what Mandingo did to the slavery movie. It uses real-life tragedy to promote political views that are, let's just say, not my cup-ho frap, and therefore I should despise it, right? However, it is stylishly directed by Christopher S. Lind and has enough moments of what the fuck to make up for the smoke and mirrors politicization. In other words, I find it more preferable to watch over-ambitious exploitation made by people who advocate for the liberal distribution of utensils of war rather than watch Academy Award-winning productions directed by a fucking nonce. Also, I wasn't a victim or related to anybody who was a victim of the Aurora mass shooting of 2012 or any other terrorist attack for that matter. If you are, stay well clear, as this film does not make any effort to be your friend. For everyone else, I do wholeheartedly recommend this descent into American sickness with gusto, as it's truly deluded beyond measure for our pleasure. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 2003's Flight to Hell. From the digital video era of Eurotrash filmmaking comes Flight to Hell from 2003. Directed by Alvaro Passeri. A private jet that happens to be a flying casino gets attacked by aliens. That's it. What started out looking like a Tim and Eric sketch soon featured beautiful women getting sexually assaulted. And then I thought, yes, Italians. Al Passeri started off as a special effects guy in Italian exploitation's twilight era in the 80s. And boy howdy does that legacy show. A purposefully abstract narrative and cheap but stubbornly detailed special effects makes me a very happy little Guido. Like most Italian exploitation films, the script is flowing with overwrought English, but then again, the script has never been the fucking point. Flight to Hell features very impressive cinematography and lighting from what must have been a very shoestring budget. What is it about the Italians that lets them transcend asylum level production values even? I don't know, and I sure as hell don't care. It's just glorious to watch. There's enough eye candy, courtesy of both cast and crew, to make Flight to Hell a mildly entertaining experience, at least. At best, if you're used to this kind of filmmaking like I am, you'll find stylish trash at its most ambitious. Although it sounds like I'm grading this film on a curve, the special effects and the detail of them really go a long way to say how much passion went into this project. There's too many nuances in detail to go through in this short review, but trust me, the special effects came first, and that wasn't much of a sacrifice. This film has no right being as engrossing as it is, but leave it to the Italians to make Ridley Scott's Aliens on a Plane using just lights and a green screen. I'm really impressed, and this film's given me nothing but good vibes, man. I got nothing but good to say about it. Oh, apart from the fact that it's cheap as fuck, none of the cast are speaking in their native language, I swear to God, and it is, and again, it's just shot all in front of a green screen, so you can't, there's only so much you can do. They do a lot, but still, those are the facts. In conclusion, Al Pasari's Flight to Hell is a magnifica example of Poverty Row filmmaking. If you can look past excessive use of green screen, then I would recommend that you go seek out this truly, and I keep using this word, but it is apt here, psychotronic piece of Italian cinema. Or is it Spanish? Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 2009's Autumn. Roughly 1/3 through this, and oh boy, what a landmark. A 2-hour zombie movie shot on mid-2000s digital video. Ladies and gentlemen, Autumn from 2009, directed by Stephen Rumbalo. A mysterious virus kills most of the human race, it seems, apart from a few intrepid survivors keen to survive this waking nightmare of walking corpses and broken generators. Autumn is based off of a novel, and my days does that sure as fuck show. Autumn is short on thrills and high on indulgent melancholy. Admittedly, it's impressive to see pre-Walking Dead TV series such as Zombie take on the whole zombie thing getting filmed, but Autumn suffers from the same problems that more well-known counterpart has also. The characters are either miserable or deranged, and the whole film seems to be dependent on us sympathizing not necessarily with them, but with the whole zombie apocalypse situation they find themselves in. Don't know about you, but I think it's been a while since the last time half the world's population suddenly died and then came to life. As this is the case, I find Autumn a hard film to sink my teeth into, as I find the film asks of me to treat the events it depicts as documentary realism and little less. Sure, our protagonist losing his family is a modicum relatable, but the bickering of the primary cast over whether to stay in a mansion or a farm is a little too much to overlook. Maybe Autumn has just not aged well, as its appeal lies solely within creating a realistic story within a horror subgenre. There are no set pieces or any hard attempt to make any of these sporadically linked scenes within the film entertaining. Autumn asks a lot from its audience and does not give much back. Maybe it did when serious takes on the zombie genre were not as common, but the approach has been overexposed and the whole thing has now just descended into misery porn. And Autumn just doesn't stand out as much as it did 8 years ago. In conclusion, Autumn is solely for hardcore zombie fans only, as it offers a smart and unsensational take on the subgenre and nothing more. It's lacking in gore, suspense, and memorable moments, and requires true concentration, which I'm just not going to do for a zombie film. But you can. It's a free world, isn't it? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the hip-hop horror 1999's Urban Menace. From Albert Pyun, director of one of the best fantasy films of the 80s, Sword and Sorcerer, comes the rap horror, oh the horror, 1999's Urban Menace. Some gangbangers torture community church and the priest of said church gains supernatural powers and kills the gangbangers. Also, one of the gangbangers wants to get out of the hood and is helped by the righteous preacher and... can't be fucked anymore, mate. Urban Menace is 60 minutes of motherfucker this and motherfucker that, taking place in an abandoned Eastern European warehouse, photographed through a Vaseline lens and later smeared with what surely is the worst colour grade I've ever seen in a widely released unquote feature. I had heard bad things about Pion's contribution to the most unlikely of subgenres, the hip-hop horror, and Urban Menace sure as hell disappointed. The script is littered with tedious action cliches and beyond forgettable dialogue. The much ad-libbing by people whose names were built on such a thing is embarrassing. Big Pun is an apt moniker because this fat fuck is an absolute joke in this. 60% of his contributions to the poor quality soundtrack are completely inaudible, and whatever speech impediment he suffers from makes him always sound like he's on the verge of a fucking stroke. Big Pun might be the epicenter of shit regarding the cast, but no one else really fares that well, with the sole exception of Tahita, who I thought put in a decent turn. Not even Snoop Dogg, with his effectively slinky presence, has anything worthwhile to contribute to this soft-focused, blown-out turd. In conclusion, Urban Menace is simply god-awful. Whether you're into the cameoing artists or not, it is simply an appalling hour-long showcase of poor action set pieces, even worse composition, and a bored-looking lineup of late 90s gangster rappers whose faces simply can't tell you enough that they are just in it for the money. Just plain torture. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 2001's Jason X. The second most tragic thing to happen in 2001, Jason X, directed by Jim Isaac. Jason is cryogenically frozen for a few hundred years until a number of students in the year 2455 discover the hockey mask relic whilst on some space expedition. Another Friday the 13th movie then happens in space. Yay. No, I did not like Friday the 13th Part 10. This film resides in the middle of an uncomfortable tug of war between a late 90s sci-fi thriller and an overproduced franchise slasher film. Jason X is all too ready to lampoon the franchise it meanderingly attempts to reboot, whilst never showing any real attempt to distance itself from the slice and dice and douchebags formula. The biggest strength of Jason X instead lies within how elaborate the script utilises the sci-fi genre, while still managing to remain just another franchise slasher film. This is also the film's greatest weakness. There are vicarious thrills to be had watching an android fight a cyborg Jason, but delve further into the stupidity and you find a franchise entry with an incredible amount of potential to breathe new life into the series, but is too afraid to veer away enough from the standards set by previous entries to instigate a new era in a then 20-year horror blockbuster franchise. Could the series truly have worked in space? Oh, fuck knows. Probably not. The issues the Friday the 13th series had at this point went way beyond just a change of scenery being able to fix. The series, as was the entire horror genre by 2001, was sinking into an abyss of self-parody and tired meta mind games. It was truly an apocalyptically uninspired era still clinging onto cut-and-paste slasher shenanigans. The subsequent torture porn films of later years did not do much to change this except put a creepy clown face upon a sad fuck of a genre. Brutality and for shits and giggles sadism didn't prevent a smart and jaded film audience with internet access from growing out of their need for campfire stories. The writing was on the wall years before Jason X came along. In conclusion, Jason X has lackluster sex, gore and direction, with only the sci-fi hybrid being the only thing of interest here. If you like the franchise, you will probably dig it. I don't, so that's probably why I had such a bad time with it. If you are not already a fan of the Friday the 13th series, like me, you might find Jason X to be a dickless, condescending experience that overindulges within its fiscal comfort blanket of its namesake villain and the forgiving nature of its preconditioned audience. Jason X is patronising, cynical, glossy, unremarkable, and worst of all for any horror film, safe. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 2009's Against the Dark. Putin's boy, Steven Seagal vs. zombie vampires in Against the Dark from 2009. Directed by, and I swear I ain't making this up, Richard Crudo. The survivors of a mass viral infection scavenge a hospital for supplies without knowing they've stumbled upon a hive of the undead. Seagal and his band of mercenary vigilantes, who I really wish were more in this film, race against the clock to save the uninfected before a tactical nuke wipes out the entire city. Seagal mumbles his lines and swings his sword as usual and brings the action to an otherwise mediocre 28 weeks later ripoff. The primary cast of survivors are decent, but that's just it. The real stars are, surprise surprise, Seagal's merc crew who bring the pain to the bloodsuckers. The moments with them are enjoyably trashy, somewhat aided possibly by the tepid moments with the lukewarm survivors. The primary cast just don't have any chemistry, and the stupefying choices made by their characters further alienate them from the audience. Their bickering just kills the film's pace dead. So, in conclusion, Against the Dark is one part boring zombie horror and one part satisfyingly kitsch Seagal vehicle. Just yet another tale of two films that seem to be a recurring theme in this series. If you can get past the dull and dumb survivor characters, then you can get the scene where Seagal shish kebabs a vampire kid. Sounds like a fair deal? If so, this film is for you. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is from 1999 again. Brian Usner's Progeny. From 1998, it is the alien abduction horror Progeny, by the director of Society, Brian Usner. A surgeon and his wife are expecting after months of trying without any success. However, during their fateful lovemaking, a lapse in time occurs which neither of the couple remember anything about. Soon, the wife starts having some weird visions of aliens, and doubt is cast over the origin of the fetus growing inside her. Progeny is a resoundingly effective paranoia body horror from one of the true masters of the subgenre. Brian Usner again directs a fine cast of character actors towards great performances, as well as stylish nightmare sequences that surely rank up there with the most visually arresting depictions of alien abduction to be captured on film. In Progeny, we sympathise with practically every character given screen time, and that for any horror film is a massive achievement. Even when they are crossing that fine line into unethical behaviour, their actions are still understandable, which only adds to the horror. In conclusion, Brian Usner combines body horror, black comedy, and an actor-friendly screenplay to create another reason as to why he is one of the most distinctive of horror directors. Highly recommended. Thank you for listening. Please leave a comment. Remember to like and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is from Jim Van Bieber, 2003's The Manson Family. From the director of Deadbeat at Dawn, The Manson Family, the final cut from 2003, directed by Jim Van Bieber. The Manson Family is a faux docudrama about the infamous hippie clan, starting at their formation all the way to the infamous Helter Skelter murders. The film is punctuated with fake interviews throughout to keep a narrative hold on all of the phantasmagoria going about. The Manson Family was 15 years of sporadic shooting and extensive post-production correlated to give a demon birth to what is surely the definitive statement on the death cult that killed the hopes and dreams of a generation, as the old song goes. Jim Van Bieber has created a cinema verite masterpiece. Regardless of the film's horror elements such as gore and moody lighting, The Manson Family always feels hideously real, if not an interactive experience. What started off as just another Manson exploitation film entitled Cult Killer turned out to be the Peter Watkins and Oliver Stone love child the world never knew it needed. The film's violence is uncomfortable and reeks of meticulous research, as are the actors' performances. Van Bieber directs and edits with the intent of most malicious mindfuckery, and for the most part achieves that, minus his now trademark over-stylized sound effects, which brought me out a little bit. However, the rest is pure white-knuckle stuff. The Manson Family is impressive in its continuity, considering the footage shot come from over 3 different time periods. Despite the anarchic spirit of the post-production work, every choice made by the filmmakers feels like it's aiding the investigation of this cult that the film undergoes. These characters seem less crazy when the events are so heavily depicted through their perspective. An understanding is reached with these psycho killers, and however lurid that might be, it is an exhilarating experience nonetheless. In conclusion, I cannot highly recommend The Manson Family enough to those who get a kick out of true crime, fake documentaries, Van Bieber, and horror in general. I say it again that this film is a masterpiece of tabloid filmmaking which is just too well made to be labelled as exploitation. A hideous and immersive experience which warrants repeat viewings. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 2009's Slave. Today's film is Slave from 2009, directed by Darren W. Welch. Recently engaged couple Georgie and David take a holiday in Spain to visit David's criminal father. Georgie goes missing one night in a club and David must go on a journey of discovering his masculinity before he can reach her again. Slave's UK DVD cover is extremely misleading. There is not a low-budget torture porn movie in here. There is a crime thriller in the vein of Sexy Beast though. Nevertheless, it does feature uncomfortable scenes of drug and sexual abuse, softened somewhat by a Ritchie-esque style. What else can I say than that Slave is an effectively moody, if atypically pretentious, British crime thriller. There is a great cast of character actors doing good work, and the script is full of neat twists and turns with occasionally affecting drama. I wish I could say more, but it seems that Slave was more appropriate for another series I have in mind. Watch this space. But nevertheless, I'll conclude by saying that Slave is a heavy-hitting study of masculinity that has a vicious edge to it. Though it might be littered with philosophical platitudes, I would still recommend Slave to those who like the works of David Cinto and the like. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Hopefully, for horror, come back tomorrow as we cover the Asylum knockoff from 2006, Snakes on a Train. The Asylum presents Snakes on a Train from 2006, directed by Peter Mervis. A curse is cast upon a young woman for choosing the man she loves, and the lover must get her to Los Angeles to break it. However, a bunch of zombie snakes stand in their way, as well as everyone aboard the train they are on. Snakes on a Train is textbook exploitation. It is a sensationalized, tedious, gratuitous film that owes its existence solely to the popularity of another. There are some good elements knocking about here, such as the snakes' horrific form of attack, as well as some strong bloody violence, but overall the feeling I got from the film was cynicism and misanthropy. Despite a suitably gonzo third act, the preceding two are filled with drab and jaded idiots that I'd never sympathise with. In conclusion, Snakes on a Train is a cheap cash-in with some thoughtful horror twists on the action film it is ripping off, but it is not enough to recommend it, as the majority of the film is exactly what I expected from an Asylum production, which is not a good thing. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film features more lo-fi thrills, going by the cover as I watch 2006's Bachelor Party Massacre. More slasher shenanigans with the horror comedy Bachelor Party Massacre from 2006, directed by Oh, what the fuck is this? Oh, that's just fucking embarrassing. I can't do that. An escaped serial killer does her thing during a bachelor party inside a rundown bar. That is it. And are you surprised? Bachelor Party Massacre is a total anomaly. A golden age era slasher film from the mid-2000s. It's amazing how well the film modernises the early 80s template of bawdy comedy and lo-fi kills. Though the killer's one-liners are definitely from the tail end of the slasher boom and can fuck right well off, the rest of the characters have some surprisingly solid chemistry and are fun to watch. Unlike last year's Slaughterhouse Massacre, Bachelor Party Massacre has all the basics down in terms of both technical as well as the sub-genre conventions. The acting is perfect for a slasher film, the direction and cinematography has an unexpectedly gritty sheen to it, and the editing and sound design are all serviceable and up to date for 2006. In conclusion, Bachelor Party Massacre is a near perfect example of how to do a micro-budget slasher film for a modern youth audience. The film incorporates a jovially ironic sense of humour that was the style of the time, and provides a tight script, impressive production values, and a cast that is more than fully aware of which pitch to play at. Though it shows its age and goes at a particular pace, Bachelor Party Massacre is the kind of film that makes trawling through keg stores and charity shops worth it, as it is a truly underrated low-budget independent horror that deserves more attention. Highly recommended. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film has a considerably higher profile as we cover 1994's Shallow Grave. Scottish people doing Scottish things like, caving people's heads in with Shallow Grave from 1994, the debut directorial effort by Danny Boyle. An upper-class trio of stupid smart mouth breathers wake up one day to find their newly acquired flatmate dead in his bedroom with a suitcase full of money underneath his bed. They decide to cut up the body and keep that treasure chest for themselves. All is well until the owner of said chest comes to collect. Shallow Grave starts quite intolerable with the primary cast displaying their dynamic range of country. However, as the plot thickens, as is the case with these kind of ghoulish stories, the likability of these characters takes second place, and the foreboding tension is kept to a sustainable degree by Boyle's kinetic direction and the Blackley comic screenplay by John Hodge. At times, Shallow Grave does feel like a film school intellectual's interpretation of a horror film, with nothing but unlikable characters through and through, and just the slightest of ill-fitting, toneless 90s postmodernism creeping through, with several notable images ripped off from other art house films. There is also just the slightest sense of pretension that the filmmakers might be thinking they are making a straightforward thriller, when it's clear that Shallow Grave's unestablished cast and nihilism for the lulz tone would almost guarantee that no audience would accept this film as such. In the end, Shallow Grave is still a shining example of Scottish cinema when it was at its prime. It deserves the praise it gets, and I do highly recommend it. Thanks for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the 2006 torture porn horror Paradise Lost. Something about 2006 seems to be working for me, as I cover what must be the third film from that year, Paradise Lost, originally known as Touristas, directed by John Stockwell, who also directed... Oh my god. After a bus accident, a couple of tourists are stuck on a remote Brazilian island. Soon though, they realise that they might be the target of a very sinister operation. Paradise Lost is not really the torture porn the DVD cover suggests. Rather, it's a mediocre cross between that then booming subgenre and a jungle adventure film. There is no extreme gore or significant tension, just a good location to boost production values and a cast of likeable, if average, would-be victims. So in conclusion, I can't say much about Paradise Lost, as it is a very forgettable film. The villains are typically over the top in their sociopathy, and the protagonists are just there for the ride, as we are. And it's not a really exhilarating one. Paradise Lost is a comparatively tame mid-2000s horror trying to capitalise on the then new torture porn subgenre, but has not the focus or the desire to meet the standards of extremity set at the time. A job's worth effort from a reliably job's worth director. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 1995's Screamers. Today's film is the sci-fi horror Screamers from 1996, directed by Christian Duguay. A burned-out rebel commander seeks to make peace with the enemy corporate army upon some wasteland mining planet. His pursuit to end the now 10-year war is interfered with, though, by the killing devices he helped to create, known as Screamers. Screamers was based upon a short story written by Philip K. Dick, and the author's cynicism and talent for world building are on display here, as well as some genuinely terrifying moments from co-writer Dan O'Bannon. Screamers is one hell of a ride, with an engaging narrative, great characters and impressive production values for a script as cynical and ambitious as Screamers. The slight hint of satire is also here, with political conspiracies and the like, which lightens the tone and livens the pace. The world of Screamers is developed through carefully written exposition, aided by the barren locations, and the horror story elements are integrated into the high concept scenario quite well, with the Screamers being very formidable and scary creatures. In conclusion, Screamers does a lot of what I like to see, and it does it exceedingly well. Sure, it might not be much to look at when compared to the previous work of the writers accredited, but Screamers is still a seminal sci-fi horror filled with a decaying atmosphere and light satire to be distinctive enough on its own. This is most definitely highly recommended. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the 2001 cult favourite, Donnie Darko. Today's film is Donnie Darko from 2001, directed by Richard Kelly. Donnie Darko, a deep-thinking teenage resident from an American small town, starts to have visions of a bunny called Frank who encourages him to use his mind and fight the system. Donnie Darko is a collection of scenes bound together using Twin Peaks bullshit and the optimism of post-90s American cinema that their era of postmodern nonsense was just beginning. Then the terrorists arrived, and the idea in Hollywood became that people are too fucking frightened for this sort of thing anymore, and then went balls deep into mediocre fantasies and franchise building. Donnie Darko is impressive for how esoteric a film with its budget is, and the idea of a high school drama from the perception of depressive is interesting. However, I found the film's pace to be too slow and too many scenes to be arbitrary and not forward in the film's narrative. The overall experience, I found that the film was too distracted with its multiple characters to give any single story the amount of attention it needed. In conclusion, Donnie Darko would have worked better as a serialized TV series than a singular feature film. The pace meandered and the cast was too plentiful for me to latch on to anything in particular. You probably already know if you enjoy this film or not. As for me, whilst it had its moments, Donnie Darko is too much of a mess for me to recommend to any general horror fan. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 1990's Basket Case 2. Today's film is the body comedy horror Basket Case 2 from 1990, directed by Frank Hellenhotter. Dwayne Bradley and his hideously deformed brother Belial are accepted into a family of other deformed individuals under the care of a mothering doctor and her daughter. However, a tabloid reporter wants to uncover Belial for the murders he committed before and threatens to ruin the sanctity of this special little pack of people. Basket Case 2 is more of what was in the first Basket Case, only with a significantly larger budget. The film has body horror atypical for the late 80s period and has a great sense of humour about itself. Hellenhotter has this uncanny knack for black comedy that I rarely see in any other director. The sounds and images he presents to us are outright absurd and at times hilarious. However, on the most part, they evoke disgust and pathos in equal measure. Basket Case 2 is a typical Hellenhotter picture in that it's a film with humour and tragedy side by side. In conclusion, Basket Case 2 is a good body horror movie with plenty of gore, grotesque and absurdism. If you like Hellenhotter, Cronenberg, or horror films heavy on the latex effects, then I do indeed recommend this film. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the 1988 psychological horror Heart of Midnight. Today's film is Heart of Midnight from 1988, starring Jennifer Jason Leigh and directed by Matthew Chapman. Emotionally unbalanced Carol Rivers inherits a nightclub from her dead uncle. She has plans to refurbish it, but the secrets the building contains threaten to unravel her very sanity. Heart of Darkness is a mid-tier arthouse film with an episodic pace. Jennifer Leigh gives a mostly good performance, as does the rest of the character-actor cast. The film is scattered with stylish touches, but at times feels directionless. Is this a ghost story? Is it an erotic thriller? Is it all a dream? Is it any good? No. Is it all bad? No, not really either. The whole thing is hit and miss. Pointless at times even. Don't necessarily mean it's boring. Like I said, the cast is good and can hold a few scenes despite their lack of consequence. Also, the music is quite good. So are the locations. They evoke the right mood. The main problem with the film lies in the script. When Heart of Darkness looks like it's heading in interesting directions, it finds a way to detour into tedium and then back again before veering off once more, with certain side characters getting way too much exposure. So in conclusion, Heart of Darkness is your atypical late 80s art film with all that is right and wrong about that. The direction is not distinctive enough, neither the cast is committed enough to cover up the half-baked psychosexual tangents residing in the screenplay. I can't recommend it, but I can't say it's a bad film either. A truly average affair. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is, again, from 2006, Six Angels. Today's film is the supernatural action horror Six Angels, released in 2006, but I have my doubts, and was directed, written, produced, bankrolled, photographed, edited, and starring Luis Almeida. 12 years in a coma, Talene wakes up to find out she has been possessed by an angel. A couple of geeks in dime store suits and monk suits tell her that she's part of a circle of angels sent from heaven to fight some demons Satan sent to destroy man and all that shit. Also, her dreams can save the world from evil. Yo, we're back into Neil Breen territory with this one. Six Angels has that same tangible white male delusion that Joker's Poltergeist had, only we're dealing with theology here, not politics. The story works like a Christian Matrix, telling Bible stories through expo dump world building, cheap gore and awkwardly edited kung fu fights. And don't I love it! Six Angels is a fine slice of independent genre cinema. Lo-fi, inept, incoherent, but stubbornly true to a very singular vision. If you can get past the low quality video and, well, everything else, There are some psychotronic joys to be had with this micro-budget Matrix exploitation. In conclusion, Six Angels is an effort from a lone nut living the dream of a post-90s independent director. Neil Breen fans will have a ball as I did. So yes, I can confidently say that I recommend Six Angels. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is from 2011, Contagion. Today's film is Contagion from 2011 from one of the best directors of his generation, Steven Soderbergh. When a lethal airborne virus with the power to wipe out humanity is unleashed, the worldwide medical community races to find a vaccine and stop the panic from spreading. Contagion may be more a thriller than an all-out horror film, but that doesn't stop the very real concept from being any more scary or frontingly realised. The worst case outbreak scenario is played out misstep after misstep until a more positive turn comes around, which stops the film from reaching biblical hyperbole. Soderbergh's films are always character first, and Contagion is no exception. Every one of the cast are committed and their characters are down to earth and totally relatable, even likeable at times. Plot and character have a solid working relationship in Scott Zburn's script, which makes Contagion a very easy film to get immersed into. In conclusion, Contagion brings the understated terror and then some, as well as some apt black humour, informed social commentary and well-judged humanity along the way. It is a superb script, realised by an equally superb director and cast. This is very much highly recommended. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is 1997's Cut-In Moments. Today's film is the anthology movie Cut-In Moments, released in 1997, directed by a lot of people. The shorts consist of themes such as isolation, guilt, apathy, sorrow, and dogs hooked on crack cocaine. Wow, where to begin with this one? Cut-In Moments is a disjointed, if still effective, horror anthology. I think most of them are shot in New York, and though it is a post-Giuliani New York, the atmosphere we know and fear still carries across the screen. The majority of the stories are standard tales from the crypt fair with a few punk elements thrown in. However, there is a good reason why the film is named after the final short, as it's easily the most affecting of the entire collection. I won't say much, but the similarities to Antichrist are suspiciously many. In conclusion, whilst it does not reach the majestic psychotronic levels of A Night Train to Terror, shall we say, Cut-In Moments is still an eclectic and eccentric bargain bin of 80s sleaze and subversion, despite all of them being shot in the 90s. It's trashy, it's sometimes disturbing, but it's still a good use of 75 minutes, and it's easy for me to recommend. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the 2005 graphic novel adaptation, Constantine. Today's film is Constantine from 2005, directed by Francis Lawrence. A policewoman asks for the help of John Constantine, an exorcist with supernatural powers, to prove that her sister's death was not suicide. Constantine epitomizes where the comic book film was in the early to mid 2000s, overlong and too many characters. The film tries way too hard to fit an expansive universe built over years worth of writing within the framework of a generic Hollywood detective thriller. Overambitious creatives, insecure financiers. Keanu Reeves is here cause Matrix and gives his atypical go-for-face performance. There is a good cameo by Tilda Swinton as Gabriel, and is the best thing about this film. Everything else is a tailspin of studio interference, featuring decent for 2005 CG, tedious expo dump world building, complex characters that arrive and leave with no rhyme or reason, and a disjointed and episodic narrative structure. In conclusion, Constantine is a mile and a half away from Batman and Robin, but about 3 years away from Iron Man. Just another attempt at a failed franchise that was par the course for 2000s Hollywood cinema. I would say avoid, but then again, I am just another white male agnostic atheist who doesn't like comic books to begin with. Do what makes you feel good. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is the low-budget time-traveling post-apocalyptic thriller, oh boy, 2035 Forbidden Dimensions. Today's film is 2035 Forbidden Dimensions from 2013, directed, written, edited, and yes, you guessed it, starring Chris J. Miller. Jack Slade can travel in time due to being born during a solar eclipse. He travels between 1998 and 2035 to destroy a portal which aliens used to gain access to Earth, whose dead bodies were then used by psychopathic doctors to create a serum that mutates people. Get it? The best thing you can say about Forbidden Dimensions is at least they tried. The film is a clusterfuck of psychedelic editing and hyperactive storytelling, resulting in a film too technically accomplished to be all out terrible, but yet too indulgent to warrant engagement from its audience, at least on the level it asks for. You see, this film had so much good imagery in it. It really embodies the cyberpunk thing, but unlike something such as Hardware, Forbidden Dimensions has that one thing all lo-fi genre failures seem to have, which is an overabundance of characters and ideas, but a severe lack of emotion and a consistent tone. Again, it's another feature based on the short, and just like someone's knocking at the door, it shows. Forbidden Dimensions is cheap and indulgent and does not have enough discipline to have all of its shit mean something. This kind of film pisses me off so because of the wasted potential due to the ego of the creatives. The narrative is incredibly complex and not in a good way, if that ever is a good thing. I had no reason to care. The film's aesthetic was underwhelming despite good practical effects and montages, and the acting just crumbles under the ambition of the script. This film has A and C, but nothing of B. Just pointless scene after pointless scene. I hate to say this, but this suffers from the wrong kind of continuity. Not aesthetic, not narrative, not tonal, but ego. This film is how it is due to one guy wanting what he wanted, and that's it. In conclusion, Forbidden Dimensions is such a disappointment on reflection. At the time of watching, I appreciated the independent filmmaking spirit of it all, but it's just too self-absorbed to be judged good on any other scale apart from its production values. It's a good film to look at, to listen to even, but the narrative is inconsequential. We as an audience are given no reason to care, and what we are left with is something that resembles just a bad to average trauma film. You know, the ones that decide what is funny for you. This film has a unique story, it has unique imagery, even in its gore and nudity. The score is okay, but that's it. I can't find anything else good in it, and for me that's just not enough to warrant 83 minutes of my time watching it to be considered well spent. Again, so much potential. Why? Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Tomorrow's film is from 1988. Again, the horror comedy, I hope, Mortuary Academy. Today's film is the pitchless black horror comedy, Mortuary Academy from 1988, directed by Michael Schroeder. Two brothers whose last names are Grimm enroll in a mortuary academy as part of a condition in their late uncle's will to obtain the rights to the properties of the $2 million academy. Mortuary Academy is a combination of Police Academy and some film people acting in this starred in previously. Mortuary Academy is more morbid than horrific, but there are some fleeting moments of gore. As for the humour, it's meandering at best and inept at worst. I did not laugh once and found the whole thing quite forgettable. The only thing of note is the political incorrectness of it all. Lot of Jew jokes, black jokes, Mexican jokes, corpse fucking jokes. That's about it. The film has a very sketch feel about it and probably rode most of its money on the shock value of the quite elaborate setups involving cheapskate funeral directors and installing animatronics in dead bodies. The majority of which for all of this goes down like a fart in church. Might be funny for who's doing it, but for everyone else there's just awkward silence. In conclusion, Mortuary Academy might appeal to those who are heavy into gallows humour. Everyone else, I suggest avoid this tepid late 80s R-rated comedy that very much so deserves its obscurity. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment and subscribe. We conclude this year's Halloween marathon with Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy. We conclude Halloween Marathon 2017 with Guillermo del Toro's Hellboy from 2004. Rasputin is alive and wants to destroy the world using demons from hell. However, the FBI have a few their side to even the odds and thwart his plans. Hellboy is one of those few rare accomplished comic book adaptations from the 2000s that works on an emotional level as well as that of spectacle. The film's greatest power is in its firm grip over tone. Del Toro displays his talent for fantasy by deftly switching between light and dark. The film manages to be funny, chaotic, tragic, hell, even scary at times, all without being overbearing. Although I would say the majority of the film teeters on camp for the most part, but it plays a delicate balancing act and stays on course by letting the characters progress the story and not the images. Such is paramount to why Hellboy stands out in an era of Wall Street stock exchanges masquerading as meaningless picture shows. In conclusion, Hellboy more than stands up to the test of time. It's an impressive visual effort as well as an emotionally effective feat of storytelling. I end this marathon on a bang, as Hellboy is a classic of comic book film adaptations and is sure as hell highly recommended. And we are done! I wish to thank those who have been following the marathon all the way through. This will not be the last you hear from me this year, so expect more content on the way. One last time, I thank you for listening and ask for you to like, comment and subscribe. I continue this curse next year by picking up where I left off, again, with the sequel to Hellboy, 2008's The Golden Army. Hello, I'm Pecking for Good TV and welcome to my Ask No Prolapse as I rank them the 5 worst films that I covered in 2017's Halloween Marathon. Number 5, Jason X. Jason X is an overproduced oddity with a confused identity. Such elements make it a divisive film. Some appreciate it, I guess the retard elements of it. I'm not one of those people, put simply. This film was a mistake. It was archaic when it came out in 2001, and now its effect on one is simply death of a subgenre warmed up. Number 4, The Demon. Cameron Mitchell is drunk and plays a psychic, is not a good enough excuse to watch this dollars mud 70s horror whose inept suspense tactics are too overbearing to even make the Mitchell moments more fun by comparison. Just a damp fart of a film. Number 3, Urban Menace. Shot on cheap digital video in some Eastern European warehouse, Urban Menace is an agonizing hour-ish of nauseating colour grade and juvenile dialogue. Several late 90s rappers embarrass themselves with a dirt cheap production exposing their surprising lack of improv skills. A piss poor effort from everyone involved. Number 2, Snakes on a Train. This film made me physically nauseous to the point that I became concerned for the sanctity of my bedroom floor. Though most of that was the half-cooked burgers with the date-expired buns I had earlier. The ill-fitting camera angles and cynical yet overwrought storytelling were not appreciated. Snakes on a Train is a film with inept direction and half-asleep performers who were probably bored witless by the one-dimensional characters they were told to play. This film will anger you with how little of a shit it gives. Now before we end this, let's look at some of the ones that got away. Paradise Lost. From the director of Cat Run comes another C-list Hollywood gem-noir film that is a feel-less and mostly spill-less torture porn dud that was too forgettable for me to even remember to mark it down for this shitcase lineup. Forbidden Dimensions. Forbidden Dimensions is a very ambitious independent effort with impressive imagery, but is way too smug and does not have a meaty enough story to carry the overly complex concept. The film made little effort to make me care about its sci-fi nonsense beyond a few cool yet vague ideas. Constantine. Constantine cuts out several important elements from the comic books and compiles together a string of characters with no build, a narrative that's all over the shop, and a very poor turn from Keanu Reeves. Constantine has enough good elements though, such as Tilda Swinton as Gabriel, to veer it away from my wrath. Underworld Blood Wars. Maybe the series had drained me, by the time I reached this fuck you it's January effort, but I doubt even a passing matinee ticket holder would find it hard remaining positive whilst discussing Blood Wars. The film is way overdated for its very late 2016 release and might feature some of the franchise's worst crimes against dialogue. However, it is a very well polished turd and is not disastrous enough to be deserving to be amongst such company as our final showcase of awful. Number 1, Someone's Knocking at the Door. Oh, fuck this movie. Combining so many elements I hate, such as neo-grindhouse, obnoxious protagonists, a non-linear narrative, oh, and it was all a dream, Someone Wasn't Validated Enough as a Child is a film that painfully overestimates how smart it is. When the film isn't enraging you with scum of the earth characters, it is boring you with a stillborn plot and beyond pathetic shock gags. This was a total embarrassment and waste of time and money for both cast and crew, and I hope every copy of this pretentious mound of shit gets buried in a field somewhere and forgotten. And breathe out. Thank you for listening. I am Pecking for Good TV. I'll be back soon with the best of Halloween Marathon 2017. Goodbye. Goodbye. Hello! I am Pecking for Good TV, and this is my list of the 5 best films I covered throughout the month of October 2017. Number 5. Bachelor Party Massacre. This is a gritty and funny lo-fi horror that effortlessly gets what being a slasher film is all about. Though low on gore, the film makes up for it with engaging characters and a sustained atmosphere of tension and dread. A sublime achievement in independent horror filmmaking. Number 4. Contagion. Featuring a plethora of Hollywood hard-hitters, both on and off screen, Contagion is a thoughtful examination of civilization's vulnerability to infection. It's a disturbing experience due to how reality-based it is, but it makes time for character drama so that the audience comprehends the very accurate effects of the epidemic and not pass the whole thing off as horror hyperbole. A truly well-balanced film. Number 3. Hellboy. Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of the Dark Horse comic has great storytelling and visuals and stands out in an otherwise stale decade of blockbusters. It's not often that writer-director credits keep up a level of universality such as this one, but Del Toro hits all the right notes and delivers a fun and fast-paced Hollywood action movie as well as displays his unique vision for all his fans to see. Number 2. Screamers. This adaptation of a Philip K. Dick short story with a Dan O'Bannon co-written screenplay is rich in detail and high on tension. Peter Weller gives a great performance as an embittered rebel commander, and Bannon's screenplay is packed with an engaging narrative, weathered characters, and a bevy of well-orchestrated twists. One of the best, if not the best, horror sci-fi hybrid I've seen so far. Before we get to number 1, let's have some honourable mentions. Joker's Poltergeist. The Aurora Massacre. A film I still cannot believe got made. It's an awe-inspiring experience, but its politics are just too toxic to give it a sincere, hearty commendation. Six Angels. A post-Matrix Angels and Demons mess of a film that has a fierce independent spirit and a game cast, but game does not always equal good, and the production value is non-existent. Therefore, it's not entertaining enough of an early 2000s calamity to make it onto this list. Flight to Hell, or the answer to what do you get when you lock some Italians, or Spaniards, inside a local news station CG studio and say, let's make the movie. Despite being one of the more pleasant of the surprises in this marathon, the bollocking cheapness of this film should not be understated, and therefore is not on this countdown. Underworld 3 and 4. They sure don't make them like this anymore, for better or worse, as always. Get your wolf on vamp fix, but as for me, I'm not gagging for Underworld 6. Rhymes! Cut-in moments. A great titular short accompanied by several of varying quality. A nice little late 90s curiosity, but I'm afraid that's it. Progeny. Something. Brian Usner's take on alien impregnation is expectedly lurid and gooey and well acted, but the script has too many dry moments for it to reach its full potential. And finally, Shallow Grave. Danny Boyle's debut is impressive AF, technically, but has 3 walking cunts as protagonists who whittled away way too much goodwill from me. And number 1, The Manson Family. The Manson Family is one of the greatest true-life crime films ever made, I'm certain of that, and in a category that includes Goodfellas, that is surely saying something. Jim Van Bieber created a horror masterpiece combining documentary realism with 60s-era psychedelia to create a nightmarishly immersive depiction of the events leading up to the Helter Skelter murders. The Manson Family switches back from chillingly calm to violently chaotic with ease, and there are not too many film experiences I can recall having that feature such jarring tonal shifts and have them pulled off successfully. This film is an incredible achievement, and I sincerely urge you all to seek it out. And that's it. Thanks for listening. I am Pecking for Good TV. Bye bye.